Hello Reds, welcome along to All for United.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to All for United. I mean, that was quite. This is going to pale in comparison, really. What a wonderful night of games. I think second place changed multiple times for all 4 teams. Crazy. Did you both get to see some of it tonight?
Yeah,
Yes, I did.
Go on, James. Sorry, mate.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I did.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So, for those of you who might not know, I should imagine you all do, we've got the Germans in the next round. Fortunately, we're at Wembley. We've got quite a good record against Germany at Wembley. But whether that's going to bode well for us is anyone's guess. So tonight, we're going to talk about Man United things, move away from the Euros. I'm sure whoever's hosting tomorrow at midday will cover a lot of tonight's action, so we won't go and hit on that too much. My first topic, Tuanzebe. Been a lot of talks about him potentially going on loan. Obviously, I think it's well documented that Bailly, Maguire and Lindelof are all ahead of him in the pecking order. I think he's been a bit, not unfairly treated, but he's not really had enough game time. I think he's had 9 starts in the whole season. And by all accounts, from what I read today, he's a little bit fed up. James, do you think that's unfortunate for him?
Yeah, I don't think really. Obviously, what we've seen has been promising, but there's been 2 mistakes that have cost us results this season alone from him. So clearly, he's not the finished article yet. But we saw against PSG, he's still a very good defender. My worry was that he was going to get sold permanently, and I didn't want that to happen. But I think a loan move's the best move for him. I think we need to keep him at the club, but he's not going to get any better just sitting on the bench. So if we can loan him to a lower Premier League team, sort of low to mid-table, then get him playing regular minutes in the Premier League, get his physicality up a little bit, or game time up a little bit, get that experience in him. I think we could develop him into a very good player, especially with Maguire and Lindelof both approaching the late 20s. So, he could be a seamless replacement for them once they start dropping off a little bit.
Cheers, mate. I was on mute then. I'm just going to add in United Bones. Hello, buddy. Hope you're well, mate.
Good, mate. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good.
Good, man. Good. Good points there, James. I think he's been a bit unfortunate, really. Not really given a good, fair roll of the dice. I've had some cracking games. We want to beat on about England not playing much together, no cohesion, and not enough time together. And, Tuanzebe's probably not had enough time to really show what he's got. I've always been incredibly excited about him. I think he's one of the best talents to come through. I think he had an absolutely storming season at Villa. He's got the right sort of shape, intelligence about him, and I think he's just had a bit of a difficult time. And when you spend 80 million on a centre back, you've got Lindelof that sort of does a reasonable job, I suppose, and Bailly, who is made of glass, but it seems to sort of fit in and do well in the meantime. It's going to be difficult, isn't it? And just unfortunate. Where did it go wrong for him, Stu? Would you want to keep him? Do you think a loan is a good move?
Yeah, Axel's one of those players, unfortunately, that falls into the crack of non-existence that is the reserves that was. Because players that weren't playing would at least get a reserve run out, and you just can't put him in under 23s because there's just a gulf of difference between under 23 football and Premier League football. So if you're not playing regularly, but as a club you see potential and you want to keep him on board, then the only move is another loan move. I think he's been unfortunate. He's had a couple of injuries. James is absolutely right. When he has been called upon, he's made the odd 1 or 2 mistakes. But on games, he's looked dare I say it, probably one of our best performers when he's on his game properly. So it's a bit of a difficult one for the club, and I think it's a bit of a difficult one personally for Tuanzebe. I think a lot of players today view a loan as the potential to the exit door. I haven't quite made it. Am I going to quite make it? And I do think it knocks a little bit of stuffing out of a player. But on the same token, you could absolutely embrace a loan move and then tell to demonstrate to your parent club what they're actually missing. And so, unfortunately for Axel, he's just in that chasm of the difference between that and reserve football anymore. And I think it's made player development more difficult because of that. I mean, you look at the under-23s and look at the stature of Tuanzebe to a standard under-23 player now, and he's a man mountain above them. He wouldn't develop and he wouldn't learn anything playing under-23s. So I would send him on loan if that's what he wants. But wherever he goes, he needs to play 38 games, next season, and then see what happens. But if he's got something about him, he'll want to take that chance. It's the same with Brandon Williams, actually. It looks like Newcastle or Southampton are after him, and you've really got to grasp it with both hands, because if you don't develop now or you stop your development now, you won't make it at a club like Manchester United, and you'll find yourself tumbling down the division. So I think it's the right move. He's just got to see it as the right move for his own development.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he needs to kind of, one way or another, take it on the chin, really. And you're absolutely right. The more he embraces whatever the club feels is necessary for him, the better he's going to mature and hopefully bounce on from that. Bainesy, good to see you, buddy. First time on one of my shows. I hope you're well. What do you think this means for Mengi? Obviously, there's lots of talk about him last season. Could he make an appearance in Europa? Obviously, he would be number 5 potentially in the pecking order, with Axel sort of going elsewhere. Do you think he'll go on loan as well? And do you think this would be an opportunity for him to maybe make an appearance in like the Carling Cup, that sort of thing?
To be honest, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He's number 5, and if we go out and buy a Varane, I don't think it's going to be in the same similar situation to Axel, where he might get a sniff due to some injuries or maybe suspensions, or if he in the first rounds of the cups, maybe. I would prefer a loan. If we're being totally honest, I'll get him out on loan. It just depends, much like what Stu said about Axel, it just depends what club he goes to. If he goes to a club where he's going to guarantee himself almost 30 plus games a season, and then he can come back after the next season, and then the club can look at him properly and see where he's developed and how he's got on, then yeah, fair enough. But I can't really see him breaking through into the first team. I'll love him to. Honestly, I'll love him too. And it's exactly the same as Axel. I really do like Axel. He has been unfortunate with some of the mistakes late on in games. It was like Leicester and Everton, wasn't it? And I hope Mengi doesn't sort of fall into that bracket. He does need games. Both Axel and Mengi, they both need games. And I think a loan move is probably the best bet for them both. It depends on this Varane situation, doesn't it? If we do get that centre-back, and all the reports suggest that we are looking for a centre-back, I doubt Mengi can really break through, to be honest. I think he's just a bit too young, and he'll probably go out on loan, I think. And I think that's a good thing for him and the club.
I mean, that's a good point. Go on, Stu. You go, mate.
Yeah, I was just about to say, really, another good sign of a player's attributes, a player's mentality, is to sometimes you've almost got to try and reinvent yourself as well. And Axel's got the potential to be a pretty solid right back, because he's tall, he's pacey. He's obviously not as good a tackler as Wan-Bissaka, but he's got that potential to be a good, solid right back. I wouldn't say, I know we dabbled with him in central midfield. I wouldn't say he's got the attributes of a central midfield player, but he's certainly got the attributes as a right back. And again, that's down to the club to maybe talk to him, maybe his agent talk to him, maybe, he should be thinking about that himself. It's very dangerous in the professional game to hang your hat in one position when you're at a club like Manchester United, because as Bainesy said, if we did go for somebody like Varane, who I thought was pedestrian tonight, to be brutally honest, then you are going to have a problem establishing yourself in the first team unless you're something very, very special. So there's another option there for him and his team to consider. Sorry.
Yeah. No, absolutely fine. Don't apologise. You're absolutely right, actually. Bainesy hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, there have been lots of talk about getting the likes of, whether it's Varane or Pau Torres or someone of that ilk. That can't really be a good thing for a lot of them at the team, really. I know Bailly's just signed a new contract. Did he sign that in the end? Or there were talks about it.
There was talks, weren't there? And there was sort of a back and forth.
He signed it. But
is he signed? Yeah.
I think that's to make him a saleable asset.
I agree with you. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think so too. But yeah, I mean, do you think that Ollie? I don't know if anyone wants to take this up, but do you think that Ollie doesn't view Tuanzebe as a player that he wants? Do you think that because of the mistakes, they're kind of cemented into Ollie's head more than the things that he has done that are good? Anyway,
I think it'd be harsh to judge him on that, especially given the lack of football that he's had over the last 2 years now. You're going to come in, you're not going to be perfect, are you? Especially at an age where he's still developing. I get in modern football, 23, 24 is more your prime now, but different players develop at different levels, and it's hard to develop much when you're not playing. So I think that's why a loan move is going to be good. I think if you can get him to a Premier League team and playing regularly, I think that'll be the best time to judge whether he's got a future at Man United. I think to judge him on this season would be very harsh because, he scored no goal against Leicester, and I think technically he scored no goal against Sheffield United as well, and both of those cost us results. But he has also had incredible performances as well, like that Leicester game in the home Leicester game where we played our complete under 23s. I thought he was incredible in that game. I thought he did very well to handle they ended up 5th best team in the league. They were 2nd for a long time as well. So to keep them out for as long as he did was good. And then obviously the PSG game as well, he really shone. So there's definitely positives in Axel's game. I'd say a lot more positives than negatives as well. So to say this is the end of it for Tuanzebe would be very harsh from Ollie.
James's observation's absolutely correct, really, because Ollie's had a tendency this season to play a select few. And we've seen, quality on the bench, such as Donny van der Beek, not really get a chance. And it's shown in Donny's game. And I think James is 100%. It's shown in Axel's game. At any level, any footballer, if you warming the bench for a good proportion of the season, you tend to get a tad nervous because what you tend to do is try too hard. And when you try too hard in a game of football, that's when mistakes happen. You kind of take yourself out your natural game. You kind of remove yourself from your natural limit, your natural kind of. I've already said natural game, haven't I? And that's what tends to happen. So it's like you kind of step out you're in a shell, and you're watching somebody that you're not really. See, when you're playing and you train and you're calm, you know what's to expect. When you go to a game, you're not desperate to impress, and that's where mistakes. That's where mistakes happen, really. And I think he's been a little bit of a victim of that as well.
Yeah, I was trying to rummage through Twitter to talk about Jaden next. So big reports today. Thanks for that, Stu. Big reports today. United have made a breakthrough. There was a lot of to and fro over the past week. 5 million, 10 million short. But I think by the looks of it, we could be getting our man within the next week or so. So Jan Fjortoft tweeted
well
today.
Said.
Hey?
Well said. I can't pronounce his name. I only know his first name.
I had to actually go away and research that beforehand. So thank you. I appreciate the appreciation. So he came out today and basically said that advanced negotiations have gone forward. They're pretty confident now. I'd actually read a couple of articles this morning, which was going to be the topic, that Dortmund are now getting restless and probably think that United aren't going to be able to stump up the goods and are doubtful. But obviously that's changed very quickly. So here we are in more of a positive light. Jadon Sancho could be joining us. James, how do you feel about that? I bet you're dying to get it finished.
I am, yeah. I still can't get excited about it until I see him in a United shirt, especially after how done it seemed last year. It seemed like it was signed, sealed and delivered last year, and we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting all at the same stage that we're probably at now all summer, and it didn't go ahead. So I really am now. It's very pessimistic, I know, but I don't want to believe anything until I see him in a shirt. I can't get myself that excited again because Jadon Sancho comes in and revolutionises his team, I believe. I genuinely believe it. I think he completely transforms this team. But I'm not getting ahead of myself until I see him holding up that shirt, shaking hands with Ollie and doing silly dances on the training ground with Jesse Lingard.
It really has had all the life sucked out of it, isn't it? And yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't believe anything, can you? What you?
I just James's little anecdote doing dances like
Jesse Lingard.
That's the dry James we love.
That would be the dream, wouldn't it? That would be the dream. I mean, as you say, James, the life has utterly been sucked out of it, and I don't think I was as excited about a transfer, with all the big fee, all the sort of stigma that comes with it and everything surrounding it. But it didn't happen last year, and it was a real kick in the nuts, quite honestly, and it really did take all the wind out of it. And until we see exactly that, him signing, hold a United shirt, I don't even think it's going to be a bit of a sort of anti-climax, really, isn't it? Stu, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a good acquisition? We've spoken about sort of players that we're going to bring in. Obviously, we've talked about a central defensive midfielder, but I've not really had that conversation with you about Jadon and what you feel he brings to the team, whether you think he's the right man. I know you prefer a more, correct me if I'm wrong, a more sort of out-and-out right winger, like a classic right winger, as opposed to what Jadon is.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of things, really. I'm actually of the opinion that this deal was probably done 3 weeks ago, and I just think it's a little bit of media posturing.
Yeah, dragging it out a bit.
Yeah, dragging it out, and I just feel that there's no way the club would allow this to not be done. There was a contract in place. We all knew this contract was in place for his salary and agents' fees, and it was just a ticking point on the transfer fee. So both Manchester United and Dortmund knew when they were re-entering negotiations where they had to be, and there's no point dicking about for 6 weeks, which apparently they've done, because eventually a middle ground would have been agreed. So they would have known this middle ground weeks ago. So my suggestion is that it's probably already done. You're not really going to announce it during the Euros while we're in the Euros, because there's no way the FA and Southgate would allow it. And it could well have been, Mark, that when Sancho didn't make the squad for the first game, that he had his medical with the England physios and medical staff just to get the necessary paperwork over the line. So my thoughts on that would be done, and it's just media posturing. With regards to what he can offer, I famously went on record at the beginning of the season saying we didn't need Sancho, and I wasn't overly convinced about him. But after watching him develop throughout the season, because he did have a poor first half of the season for whatever reason, nobody knows. But watching him develop after the season, I think he scored 16 goals. Was it 10 assists, 12 assists, something along those lines? What I've noticed about him is he's very dynamic, and it's something that we need. I've been crying about the fact that a lot of the issues with our lack of penalties in the second half of the season was our lack of penetration. We stopped running at defenders. We stopped trying to commit defenders, and we weren't getting spot kicks. It's got nothing to do with what managers were whinging about. It's our own failure to attack and really run at defenders that cost us that. So I think Sancho will certainly bring a different dimension to us. I have to say, if I was Cavani, I'd absolutely be that'd be mouth-watering for me, because he knows the quality that Sancho can deliver in terms of crosses, and somebody like Cavani will be able to feed off that.
But is this? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Is this not what Martial, Greenwood, and Rashford already offer?
Well, we don't cross the ball. we never cross the ball, do we?
No, you're absolutely right.
The only crosses come in from Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka when he makes an attempt. Greenwood doesn't cross. Rashford, I can't remember the last time I saw Rashford cross. And of course, Martial's been injured. What it might do, it might give Mason Greenwood a bit of a headache, or it might give Marcus Rashford a bit of a headache. It's going to give one or two of those headache, which is great, really, for Ollie, because that should then, those players should then look at themselves and see how I can dislodge Sancho, because Sancho's not going to come in and sit on the bench like Donny van der Beek. I also think that because of the money difference, I also think it'd be great for Donny, because if we are able to secure that central defensive midfielder, we are able to bring Donny into, to play 15 or 20 Premier League games a season. Then I think having someone like Donny's intelligence to work alongside Sancho's industry and Wan-Bissaka's guile and tackling ability will be very, very difficult to beat. So James is absolutely right. He'll add a huge dimension and probably be one part of a jigsaw we just need to fill. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to the prospect of that now.
You know what? It's refreshing to see someone vocalize the fact that they were wrong. And I'm not saying that you were wrong.
I was wrong.
No, I'm not saying that you were wrong, but we don't see enough of that these days. I mean that in the nicest way possible, and it's good to see. And I've said that I've had many conversations before, and I think we've all said the same at one point. Is he going to be the right man? And we don't know ultimately. He might come in and it just might not work out for him. We thought huge things for Donny van der Beek, and I still believe that will happen, but it's just not quite worked out for him. I think my internet's on its knees a little bit, so I apologise, and I'm going to try and get other people to talk. Bainesy, are you in agreement with the lads? Will you be happy with that? And Stu made quite a good question earlier. He said quite a good question. If the deal has already been done, then what other deals have been working on in the last 3 weeks? Because they better be working on something else. I think, obviously, there are other crucial signings that need to be made, probably higher than the right winger position. But obviously, with the media and all of the last season and stuff, it was just one of those things that they had to get sorted. Yeah. Are you in agreement with these guys? And what do you think in response to this?
So I'll tackle Stuart's one first, which was if we're looking at any other deals for the past 3 weeks. I agree with Stu that I think this deal was done a couple of weeks ago. There was just so much noise coming out from both ends that there was this figure of 85 million euros. I don't know what reports came out this morning. Apparently that Dortmund was scared of United not having the funds, even though United financials were public. So, and they made a ridiculous amount of money during the COVID period. So I don't know where those reports have come from or who's written that, but I think that's Dortmund trying to save face in the fact that they're trying to say that, the only reason why we've accepted a lower amount than we wanted was because United didn't have money. Maybe it's just a media tactic that Dortmund are trying to play. I don't know. I do agree with Stu, like I said, that I think that this was done 2-3 weeks ago, and we are starting to see more noise now about a centre-back. So I know Varane came. There's been a few reports from Madrid saying that the Varane deal, he's not going to sign a new contract with Madrid. And there's more noise coming out now. And I don't think we'll get solid reports coming out till after the Euros with Varane. I think he's that type of player where he's gone, right, I'm going to put the club football to the side. I want to win the Euros. So I don't think we'll see much movement in terms of Varane in where he's going to go. Is he going to sign that contract? I know there was a report that came this morning or maybe yesterday that United are scared that they're not going to fall into this Sergio Ramos trap where he's just trying to get a mega contract with Madrid. We don't know, but I think we are working on other deals. The Varane, it is very worrying for me that we're not looking at a defensive midfielder yet. But again, that can change because a lot of players that we really want in a defensive midfielder role, they're playing in the Euros at the moment. So it could be let's see at the end of the Euros and see where we go.
I'm glad you said about the Varane deal and the whole Ramos thing that we had a few years back. Well, quite a few years back now. I just can't personally see for a defender that's probably one of the best in the world, has won everything at Real Madrid. I just don't believe in United enough for it to happen. I mean, that would be the dream centre-back signing, wouldn't it? And the perfect partner for someone like Harry. Oh, okay, Stu's wincing at me. Go on, mate. What are you saying?
There's undoubtedly he's with talent, a very, 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 very good defender, but I don't see him fitting into the Premiership. I didn't think it was any good tonight, but I didn't think France were great shakes anyway because they didn't need to be. But I think he's a bit lightweight as a central defender. I don't see the aggression. When you're playing alongside somebody like Ramos, when you're playing alongside somebody like Pepe, they're two very, very aggressive centre halves. And as good as Maguire is, he's not really aggressive. And Varane wouldn't add that to. I don't think he wouldn't complement Maguire, in my opinion. And the thing is, the Premier League has changed. And I know that, people will say, well, most teams play with a false nine, so he'll be all right for that. But I think you'll find the false nine will start to disappear and you'll start to see more and more front-end strikers coming back into the game who are good in the air, who've got great movements, who are willing to take a risk to score a goal. And I'm not so sure whether Varane's willing to take a risk to keep it out. So I'm not 100% sold on him. I'm not saying he's a bad defender because he isn't. He's clearly you don't play for Real Madrid for how long has he been at Madrid now? Years, but you don't.
Yeah, I think we were interested in him. Ferguson was still there, and Mourinho was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, we were linked with him years ago. Absolutely years ago.
Yeah, we've always been linked with him. I know that, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's the right player. Just because Fergie liked him or Mourinho liked him, he's got to fit in. For me, the central defensive, as a central defender, I know how specialist it is, and I know that if you haven't got the chemistry with your partner,
here he goes, James. Here he goes.
Yeah, I know if you haven't got that chemistry with your partner, if you've got two individual central defenders, that's great. But if you haven't got that chemistry, it's a recipe for disaster. And if De Gea remains our number one, and we all know De Gea's not commanding enough, then I'm not really sure Varane's the right one for us.
Yeah, actually, that's quite a good point. Actually, I do agree with what you're saying. It's very easy for us to sort of sit here and go, "Oh, yeah, he's the man." Ultimately, we don't know, and I think you've made a very good observation there, where he has played alongside Sergio, who is very vocal, who will sort of keep him in line. Now, I'm not saying Harry doesn't do that. I think actually he doesn't give enough credit. He doesn't get given enough credit for that. I think he is quite vocal. I think he is quite, a good leader. But he's not Ramos, and I think you're right. He could well not be the right frame for the Premier League. But until he comes here, who knows? But I just think it's a good option to have, and on paper,
Marquinhos.
awful terminology, I think it would be a wonderful signing.
Marquinhos.
Do you not think that with a player like Varane, he's got enough experience to try and cater his game towards the Premier League after, let's say, a couple of months? Because you look at some centre like Thiago Silva. Everyone said about Thiago Silva how he was too old, but you ask any Chelsea fan, and you'll think that the best partnership is Rudiger and Thiago Silva, and he came from PSG, and you'd think that Varane is experienced and smart enough to try and change his game a little bit and try and beef himself up to really get to the physical side of the Premier League. Just to tackle your other points too about the aggressor, but if you look at other centre-back partnerships, let's just look at Stones and Diaz. Both of them can play the ball at their feet. I don't think one of them there is the aggressor. And then you could flip it again and to say with Liverpool, with Van Dijk and Gomez, I'm not sure who the aggressor is there either. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw a spanner in the works. But
no. It's a good point, Bainesy. Although Diaz has been left wanting, hasn't he, in the Euros? Let's be honest, he's been
he hasn't looked great in the Euros, to be fair.
No, but at the two, I would see Diaz as the more aggressor. I guess I'm not really talking about the likes of Stevie Bruce. I'm not talking about the likes of Jaap Stam and Vidic, etc. But you've got to, at a centre back pairing, you've got to have somebody who's willing to put your body, your head, whatever, where it hurts. And Varane's too much of a pretty boy, I'm afraid, for that for me. And he may well sell shirts and that, but to be a good, solid centre half in a really tough league in the Premier League, you've not got to worry about how you're looking, and you've got to look about what you can do, what's your abilities, and I think he'd be better suited at PSG personally. But that'd be great because then I think Marquinhos would come on the market, and I look at Marquinhos for me
he's a great player.
He's
great
absolutely.
You love him,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask another pretty boy, James.
James is in. Yes.
James, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with these two? Would you like Varane at the club or someone else? Do you think even a centre back's needed?
See, my method of thinking for this is Maguire and Lindelof, theoretically, and have proven it at times, especially last season, the season before the one just gone. They've proven that they can work. In theory, they should work. You've got that big centre back with a smaller, more technical centre back, and it's worked for other teams. It's worked for us before as well, especially this season. I think where we get caught out is that Lindelof's not physical enough. He's technical enough. Definitely, you could make a decent holding midfielder. He's that technical on the ball, but it's that physicality that he's missing. He's not quite the tallest. His aerial ability is not the best. So I'm looking at Varane, who is also very technical, as a direct upgrade to Lindelof, as a way of getting this partnership to really blossom. He's quicker. I think he's a better on the ground defender. He's definitely better in the air. I think he's probably more physical as well. So I think this sort of this stylistic partnership that Maguire and Lindelof represent needs to be continued. I think that's the way forward in football. So Maguire takes the Ramos role and Varane obviously takes the Varane role, and they've been one of the most successful partnerships in the last 10 years or so. So I'm looking at Varane thinking he can definitely be an immediate improvement. Whether his age will factor in, and whether we're looking for a long-term partner to Maguire, or you're actually saying that they're a similar age, aren't they? But it's whether we're looking for.
They're both 28, aren't they?
He's 28.
Yeah.
28.
I'm concerned we're looking at this and going, they're both 28, which means they're both gonna. If Varane stays at United for the rest of his career, they're both going to go at the same time, aren't they? Really, and you're not going to have any sort of transition period. You're going to be dumping two new centre backs into the mix. That's my only concern with it. I think a player like Pau Torres at 24 can offer that continuity once Maguire leaves and bring in another centre back. But Varane right now, like I said, offers that improvement on Lindelof. He's a similar style of player to Lindelof. I just think he's tenfold. His ability is tenfold better. I don't even know if that's how you'd say it. I probably butchered that. But
you're right, actually. You are right. Yeah, the problem with Lindelof, he gets caught wrong side on too many occasions. The goal actually in the Europa League final, he was caught wrong side. You've always got to you've got to be able to see your attacker or the person you're marking in your peripheral vision. You should never be behind you. You should always be in front of you or to the side of you. So Lindelof, unfortunately, for whatever reason, gets caught wrong side on more occasions. And that's why he has his problem with weakness, because he's wrestling the player from the wrong angle. So if you think about the Europa League game, I can't remember the striker's name, but Lindelof was in front of him. So it's easier for the striker to muscle Lindelof out. And it's more difficult for you to kind of muscle from behind. And so his positioning was incorrect there. And that, that's an area of the game he's got to improve on. So if Varane does come in, as an example, that's the type of thing that we're going to need from Varane, is to make sure his positional sense is A grade. And he is probably a strong. He's taller, isn't he, James? I think, is he taller than Lindelof?
Yes, I think he's about 6'3".
He's taller. He is 6'3". You're absolutely right. He's taller and he's far quicker as well.
I mean, look, speed's important, but as I said today, Mark, with Portugal, if you notice, they played deep, so they stopped the run-ins behind, because of Mbappe, and we can do that because we should have the know-how and the nous to be able to do that. So speed isn't always key for a centre half, although it's important, but it's not always key. But I don't know. It's a tough one. I think for me, a centre half's got to really jump out at me. I've really got to be, wow, that's what we need. Somebody who's commanding, somebody who reads the game well, somebody who can communicate, somebody who can bring the ball out nicely, somebody who can start attacks. I'm talking about Marquinhos, obviously, because that's what he does. I mean, he starts all of PSG's attacks, but that's if Varane can do that, and correct me if I'm wrong, lads, because I probably haven't seen enough of Varane, but I don't think he offers us all of that. And I think if we are going to change Lindelof, James, I think you make a really, really good point, actually. Then you need a huge upgrade on him, not just a small upgrade. You need as James would eloquently put it, a tenfold upgrade on a player.
I like that. We're going to coin that one for future.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just say one more thing? I think to go with what Stu said, I'll start by saying if we do sign Varane, the signing's completely redundant if we don't sign a defensive midfielder. I think that partnership of Varane and Maguire is still way too exposed. Any defensive partnerships too exposed without a competent defensive midfielder in front of them. But like Stu said, a player that doesn't quite jump out to you, Varane's got question marks over him, obviously. He's one of the better centre-backs in the world, but we're in a very weird time right now where world-class centre-backs are very hard to come by, and even harder to come by are world-class centre-backs who are readily available. Marquinhos, it's going to take a ridiculous sum to get him out of PSG. I think it'd take a lot of convincing as well. He's very settled there. He's their club captain now as well, so it's going to take a lot to get him out. And then you look at your options elsewhere of players that are available, especially for a similar price as Varane. I'd question all of you to name me one that's sort of on Varane's level, both ability and experience, that's available for that sort of price.
Well, there isn't.
That's the problem we face.
I don't think there is. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're spot on, actually, and I think I've had this discussion with you before, at least someone else. There aren't a huge amount of world-class centre-backs at the moment.
No, it really isn't.
We're kind of clutching at straws. Look, from my point of view, this is what I see, okay? By all accounts, he'll probably be available for 40, 45 million. Now, granted, he's got 1 year left on his contract. That is quite a lot of money, but for the player you're getting, I think that would be worth it. And I think in United's eyes, you're going to get a world-class player that's going to bring them shirt sales and the rest for 40 million. I feel, okay? I also feel that it could, even though he's 28, I didn't realise he was actually that old, but I guess time flies when you're having fun, right? He would be a very good mentor for someone like Tuanzebe. We go back to our first point, and Mengi, okay? So I also agree with your point, Stu, about not necessarily having a quick centre-back. However, I think the best partnerships in world football are a quick one-on-one defender like Varane, who's not necessarily as strong as everybody else, but does a great job alongside someone that is a little bit more bulky, isn't quite as quick. Maguire, Lindelof, both of those that read the game well and also play the ball out very well too. And it's Rio and Vidic, Pallister and Steve Bruce. Yeah, those are examples where those two seem to just bode very well. And that's my view on it. Again, we don't know how it's going to be. We don't know whether it's actually true, whether it's possible. And we don't know how he's going to play when he gets here. It might end up an awful signing.
The other thing that worries me about, and this is, I don't know, I'll have to choose my words very, very carefully here. Lindelof's got a huge grasp of the English language. And I'm not saying Varane hasn't, but if he speaks bad English or doesn't understand English, I can't imagine he'd be able to understand Maguire that well. And communication's a big, big thing.
That's a fair point, to be fair.
He's not scarred, don't worry.
He's from Hull, isn't he? Hull. Isn't he from Hull?
Yeah,
No,
I think so.
No. Sheffield, I think.
Sheffield, yeah.
Is he Yorkie, isn't he? A South Yorkie.
I can imagine if someone like Varane comes in, Pogba will just step in like how Pogba translated everything that Oli said to Cavani. Was it Spanish? I think it was because Pogba speaks like 19 different languages, doesn't he? So it's like, so I remember there was a report coming out that Pogba translates all the tactics for Oli to Cavani. But it's a fair point, to be fair. Communication, especially for a centre-back partnership, is so big. But to touch on your point earlier, Mark, about if there is another centre-back on the same price range, the only one really that sticks out is Pau Torres. Now, I've got my reservations about him because at Villarreal, he plays in a deep block and he would have to come out of Villarreal to go to United and play a high line and in the Premier League. So you're looking at two completely different play styles, whereas Varane is used to being at Madrid, playing a high line, always having the possession of the ball, whereas Pau Torres is almost opposite. But saying that, Pau Torres is super young, so he can pick it up with the right coaching and things. So yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, I wonder what that's like playing a hard line. Must be wonderful. I had a conversation many months ago about Pau Torres on another channel actually, and he was absolutely convinced. Hang on a minute, I'm giving you some good information here. He was absolutely convinced by people that he'd spoken to that Pau Torres was absolutely nailed on, and that's who they'd earmarked for a long, long time. Now, you're absolutely right, Bainesy. He is not quick, probably very similar to Maguire and Lindelof in that aspect, but has different attributes which they don't have, and I agree. Villarreal are very much used to sitting deep and sort of getting people on the counter attack. We saw that kind of against United in the final, and who knows. So I think this one really with Varane is probably taken everybody by surprise. I think we've only really known about it in the last couple of months. And when these sort of things present itself, then perhaps that's the way to look forward. Anyway, listen, I'm going to stop on Varane now. Let's not get too excited. I just want to quickly talk about Paul Pogba. I've read a few things. You've probably all seen it over the last few weeks. Talks about, or at least talks have intensified with regards to signing a new contract. Obviously, if players like Sancho and Varane, or someone similar, do come in, James, do you think that would be enough to keep him? What are your thoughts? Do you think he'll stay?
I think he, like a lot of us, is waiting for that defensive midfield partner because, we for years we've been promising him talent and we've delivered on bringing in talent around him, but never in that midfield position alongside him. I lost my train of thought. yeah, like we can bring all the players in that we want around him. But if we don't, I think he's looking for that midfielder that will help him personally thrive in a sort of a Kante type of player who will really elevate his own game. I think more than anything, allow him to play the role that he wants. So I think he's waiting like us for a player to go alongside him, like say a Basuma or whoever we're planning on bringing in, to just give him that free role that he wants so desperately and that he has for France. He seems so much happier on the pitch for France, and I think that's why. So I don't know whether Sancho in particular would make him stay, but I think there could be signings that we make that would make him stay. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a good point actually about the. I was going to talk about the French team. He does look a lot more sort of at home, doesn't he? Excuse the pun, but he does look like he just seems a lot more relaxed. He's able to do what he wants to do. He's obviously got someone like Kante who we could do with, not him per se, but someone similar, as you said. That really allows him to express himself, and yeah, I mean, I don't blame him for not wanting to sign a new contract. I don't blame him for turning around and say, I want to see some sort of ambition. I know that he wants to win trophies, but I think that also players that are at a club, that are at a big club, that are at a club that should be winning trophies. It's not against the grain to say, look. I want to see a bit more, and fair play to him. That's what we're all holding out for. Now, the talks about a new contract, 500,000. Don't know how close that's going to be. Don't know whether it's going to be that. Could be a little bit less. Could be a little bit more. I doubt it very much. But now we had this problem a couple of years ago. You remember with Alexis Sanchez, and it was all about for 2 seasons trying to get rid of him. Really, I think he did obviously disrupt the apple cart. But we needed to get that wage bill down. Now, Stu, do you think that if Pogba signs this contract, that's exactly what's going to happen again? It could rock the boat for some other players.
Well, I wouldn't pay any player 500 grand a week anyway. We, as a club, shouldn't be even negotiating at 500 grand a week. And I'll probably get slaughtered on Twitter for that because I'm being slaughtered on Twitter for Varane. At the minute, and it's because unfortunately fans just see these buzz players. We've got to have Varane, got to have X, Y, and Z, and all that kind of nonsense.
Sorry, mate, that's probably my fault.
No, that's fine. I don't mind.
You used the wrong word.
Yeah, I don't mind it. But it just goes to show that our fan base just looks at it and and sees a buzz player and just thinks, "Wow, we've got to have Varane." It's just a load of bollocks, really. I just think anyway. Just going back to Pogba, I wouldn't pay any player 500 grand a week anyway. It just doesn't sit right with me. I kind of think that if we could tie Pogba down, I think it'd be great. My worry is Raiola, because Raiola will probably realise what's Pogba now. Is Pogba 28 as well?
Yeah, this will be his last sort of mega contract now, won't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, and I think Raiola knows that. So Raiola is going to try and get the best contract he can get for his client, but also for his own back pocket. And I think you have to remember when you're talking about Pogba, you're talking about Raiola in the same breath, and that's always a big issue and will continue to be a big issue. Pogba as a player, when he's on his game, as James says, is brilliant, absolutely superb, and we've all identified in the past that he needs a player to unshackle him, which we don't currently have in our squad. And so whether we get the defensive midfielder that we're all craving for and all crying out for, I don't know, but that will certainly do it. But would I pay him 500 grand a week? Absolutely not. If we're entertaining that, I would take 80 million. I'd rather do it that way than waste 500 grand a week. That's 3 players' salaries really. Going in one side. That's my own personal opinion.
No, I'm in agreement with that. I think we're moving into very dangerous territory, and I think it could open up a whole can of worms that you really don't want for various reasons. So I am absolutely in agreement with that. Bainsy, how important is it? I mean, firstly, I just want to say we have been saying for many years, really, that Paul Pogba is the catalyst. He's going to be the player that we're working around. And there have been talks for many years, one way or another, about getting a DM in to unlock that. Now, that's not Pogba's fault, is it? That's not Pogba's fault at all. But on the back of that, do you think Pogba should have done more over the last few seasons? Do you think he's deserving of a new contract of that amount? Obviously, he's had a good season this year. He's best football we've seen him play at United. But so talk to me about those.
I think it has to work both ways. I think United have to be ambitious and get the DM that suits Pogba, and you build a team around Pogba. But at the same time, Pogba then doesn't help himself by putting in some of the mediocre performances he's put in. Now, we all know, and we've actually seen for the past 2 weeks, how good Pogba is. Now, whether that's because he's got Kante sitting next to him cleaning up, I'm not sure if people, even in the comments or if you guys here saw earlier, but in the first I think it was the first 10 minutes in that France game, he lost the ball. He tried to shield the ball, lost it, and then Griezmann come out of nowhere and chopped the player and won the ball. He does that quite a lot at United, where he tries to shield the ball, and there's always a 2-on-1 situation. He loses the ball, and it often ends up in the opposing team shooting on goal. You don't often get that United sort of bundling in and just trying to save Pogba from losing possession. Now, an adequate DM will hopefully solve that issue, and we can see that what he can do. Like, I mean, you saw it today. He created 3 clear-cut chances where he put it on a plate. One was for Mbappe, which he should have scored, Benzema, and he scored, and the other one, it was for the penalty, wasn't it? Yeah. So you can see what he does at a deeper midfield playmaker kind of role, where he can just sort of ping it around, and then you can see with his partnership with Bruno as well. So I think an adequate DM next to Pogba, who can sort of mop up and just clear everything, all of his mistakes out of the way, it's only going to be beneficial for United. With his salary, I'm always uncomfortable paying someone £500,000 a week. I'm with Stu on this one.
I would be too. I'd be out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, I don't. If United can go for it and they think that he's worth that, then fine, go and do it. But then you've got to match his ambition. Don't forget, Wayne Rooney did this a few years ago, where he wanted to leave the club and he wanted to see ambition from the club. And then I think Fergie had to sit down with him. We signed up all these types of players. Fair enough. So Wayne Rooney did it. So if Wayne Rooney can do it, why can't Pogba do it? That's my only qualm I have about the whole situation.
Yeah, spot on, mate. I think.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah,
sorry, Mark. Just add something on the wage thing. I think whether he signs this contract or not, and like the $500,000 wages will very much dictate whether we think United are looking long term or short term for success. Because short term success comes with offering Pogba $500,000 a week, paying him that, getting him to stay, and building a team that way that suits him. But that short term success planning, I think it hinders you in the long term, because your wage structure that we've just sort of calmed down a little bit from the Sanchez situation will then be destroyed again. You'll have players thinking, well, I'm sharing a pitch with him. Why am I on a quarter of his wages? You'll have it's going to be a very downward spiral, where we'll see, as we see at the minute, I think players like Brandon Williams are on like $100,000 a week. We'll start seeing more and more of that in the club, where you'll have Mason Greenwood's next contract will be $350,000 a week, that sort of thing. So it's a very slippery slope, and I think it will bring us success in the short term. I think, especially with the right recruitment this season, but you've got to weigh up whether Pogba staying and being one of the world's best midfielders, playing at Old Trafford every week, is worth jeopardising maybe the next 5 years of squad harmony and financial stability.
Yeah, good points there, James.
You've got to add agents' fees onto it as well.
Yeah.
You've got to add all that on.
Raiola is horrible. He's horrible
10,
with
15
that.
million.
Listen, love him or loathe him, he's just bloody good at his job. Yeah. He's Pogba's best mate.
Well,
playing the game, isn't he?
Yeah. And you know what? I'd be sticking my middle finger up to all you lot as well.
There's one other thing. I mean, Ugly Bear is. I mean, he makes a point, and I accept his point about why keep. Who cares about salary as long as we keep our best players? Can any of us actually really think that Pogba would have earned a 500 grand a week contract or a 400 grand a week contract?
No.
Does anyone actually think he would have earned that? It's just a question. I'm not.
It's a good point, actually. To be fair,
it feels very much like we're very much paying for the idea of what Pogba can bring, rather than what we've actually seen of Pogba at United.
Yes,
that's my thoughts on it as well. And that's the thing with, going back to Varane or somebody of that nature, any player, by the way, whoever you bring in, you're paying them for the thought of what they can bring. When we actually, because they're not delivered on that, have they? I mean, Sancho may be that. We don't know, do we? Time will tell. But
I mean, if United were clever about it, based on track record, they could maybe say, look, we'll put you on this, but if you don't hit these targets, I mean, United are not that clever, are they? That's what I'd do. Based on his track performance, you say, look, you can have this much money, and if you don't hit these targets, then we're going to bring it down to this much.
They have a clause like that anyway, don't they? With the Champions League.
Champions League, yeah.
I mean, like a personal performance thing for him, and I don't. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily work well for a player if you're on a personal performance rubbish, but they could be clever about it. They don't want to have their pants pulled down with Raiola. And maybe they could do something like that, but whether that's feasible, I have absolutely no idea. Look, the way I see it, Bruno Fernandes is obviously a player that's come in, and someone said to me a few months ago, and it's a very good way of explaining it, is Bruno kind of sets the level of that team. He's brought everybody up to that level and thinking, shit, this is how we've got to play. This is what we've got to do. This is what's expected. But Paul Pogba is one of those players that will set the ceiling. Yeah, so everything in between is what people need to aspire to. Does that make sense? And this is why I believe that Pogba is an absolute necessity. We need to do everything we can, bar stupid wages. And then you have to sort of look at it and push and shove. But I think it's absolutely paramount these days.
I like that idea. I love that idea.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a romantic idea. Has he set the ceiling?
No.
Has he set the ceiling?
No.
James likes Pogba. What do you think, James? Give us your honest opinion, because I know you like him and you rate him, and I do as well. I rate him he's a wonderful talent on his day. But has he actually set the ceiling since he's been back?
I think on three separate occasions he has. I think when Ollie first came in, I think he was the best midfielder in the world for maybe 3 months. I think we really got a glimpse of what Paul Pogba was about. Then Project Restart, I think, again, he showed why he's regarded so highly. And then just before his injury, so when we were top of the league and he scored 3 goals in 3 away games to win us 3 games, he was phenomenal then, and we saw where he's at. But I think that's the worry, that lack of consistency. The fact that we've only had 3 different 3-month spells over the course of 5 years is a worry. But you look at sort of the tactics that were being played then, especially the first 2. When Ollie first came in, he was in a midfield of Matic and Herrera. So, that's the only real time we've had that base that Paul Pogba likes that he can then build off. And we saw what he's all about as soon as we did. And then Project Restart, and Nemanja Matic had some miraculous rivalry, which I seemingly fell in love with him and got a lot of stick from Mark and Ben and the boys for. And he offered that base that Paul Pogba needed again, and we saw the best of him. And now that Matic is out of the team, we're relying on 2 makeshift DMs. I don't think either of them are natural holding midfielders in Fred and Matoni. I think they're both decent box-to-box midfielders, but the pair of them together make one sort of mid-table level defensive midfielder. It's just not, especially with the need to include Bruno as well. There's not enough space on the pitch, and there's not enough resources available right now to get that performance out of Pogba. So I think that the proof's in the pudding. When Pogba plays well, he's got that base behind him. So why are we not going out to get that stable base behind him?
Because a good DM releases Pogba, which then releases Bruno. You see, at the minute, we're not getting that release of Bruno, even when Pogba does play, because he's shackled by Fred and McTominay, or one of them, because they're both having to come deep, aren't they, to receive the ball. So you're right.
Well, we saw what Pogba and Bruno can do together. Where a post lockdown, when we had Matic as the sitter, and then we had Pogba and Bruno, we were scoring goals for fun. I think
what James is talking about,
yeah, and even when Bruno weren't there, and you're going back the season before, when Oli came in for his interim period, we had a midfield of Herrera, Matic, and Pogba. And even Pogba then, he was scoring goals for fun. Okay, yeah, he had a few penalties, but he was scoring goals for fun. He was creating goals for fun. And we can see with Matic, and this is Matic, by the way, and I've always been an admirer of Matic. I think right now his legs are gone. I think he's just too old. If we have a Matic 5 years ago, I think we're in such a good position. But obviously now it's trying to find that player. But we saw what Pogba can do with Matic, Bruno, and with those two in midfield. So it just makes sense that United go out and go get a DM, but it's just worrying that we're not actually linked with anyone. Unless Ollie's, for some reason, finds Fred or McTominay being that player. I can't see it personally, but...
The only thing I can think of with the defensive midfielder and the fact that we're not linked to one, it goes back to the problem that we have with centre-backs in that there's not many world-class centre-backs available. I think right now there's an absolute wealth of quality defensive midfielders available that for a reasonable price as well. So I think the idea is if we need to get a centre-back now, otherwise next year we run the risk of one not being available at all. Whereas I think there's that many quality DMs in the game at the minute. They're becoming such an important part of the game that I think the thinking behind United, it's obviously going to be a money-saving summer after COVID. I think they're thinking if we can hold on for one more year without one, we're still going to be able to get one next year. I don't think the same logic applies for a centre-back. So I think that's why we're going for a centre-back more than a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, that. Yeah, well made. Well made.
James, this is exactly why you were on this show, and this is exactly why you're a phenomenal host. Great point, mate. Thank you very much. Listen, boys, I'm going to end it there. Thanks, everybody, for coming on tonight. Thanks for all the comments. Great to see the discussion coming in. For those of you who are on Facebook and Twitter, make sure you come over to All for United on YouTube, youtube.com/All for United. Get your comments in there. We want to see some debates and put your things on the screen and all that. But no, really good discussion tonight. Listen, boys, great to have you on. Let's see what happens in the next game, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation with regards to England against Germany very soon. Cheers, boys.